Well, that's good. Very good. You know what I'm going to talk about today is kind of not so good, but I know a week or two ago I think it was Henry actually brought up the deal. When is Satan to be cast down to the earth? And so it got me interested, and I was looking up all things. So that's what I want to talk about today. When is Satan to be cast down to the earth? We're, I think, in no hurry for it, but sometimes we wonder if it hadn't already happened. Things go so bad. But it does say quite a bit about it in here, and I think it does give us an idea. Let's go to Job 38. Job 38, verse 1 through 4. Anyway, here Job has had all kind of troubles brought on by Satan, tempting him, and then his friends have kind of turned against him and wondered, well, just confess your sins, and he's feeling put upon, and he gets kind of angry at God, and he's thinking he's being very fairly untreated, or very unfairly treated. And here in verse 38, the Lord speaks to Job, and that's kind of scary. The Lord answered Job out of the storm and said, "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge?" It would be kind of scary. "Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me." Now let's skip down to verse 7, and God is talking about the creation of the earth. When he created the earth, he said, "Where were you," speaking to Job, "where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" Verse 4, "Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it?" Verse 6, "On what were its footing set? Or who laid its cornerstone?" And then verse 7 is very interesting. It says, "While the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy." In other words, at the creation of the earth, of course it was a beautiful creation, the angels shouted for joy, and we expect Satan was right there among them, because he sort of inherited the lordship of the earth. And verse 11, let's see, I'm looking for verse 11, I guess. Job 1. Let's go back to chapter 1. 11. And here Job is tempting, Satan is tempting Job. But really the verse I want to go to is verse 6. "One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. And the Lord said to Satan, 'Where have you come from?' And Satan answered the Lord, 'From roaming throughout the earth and going back and forth in it.'" So here is Satan at the very throne of God in the time of Job. So, we know he still had access to heaven at that point. And in Genesis chapter 3, 1 through 4, Genesis 3, we're doing a lot of turning to different places, but here we find Satan in the Garden of Eden. It says, verse 1, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?' And the woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say, You must not eat from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. Verse 4, Satan said, you will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good from evil. So Satan was in the Garden of Eden, and he also had access to God's throne at I guess, certain given times. And now let's turn to Isaiah 14. And Satan was doing what he always does, cause trouble. Isaiah 14, 12, I think. Well, actually, in 14, this is a prophecy, a prophetic chapter, and it's talking about time still in our future, I think. Like verse 1, it said, the Lord will have compassion on Jacob, and once again, he will choose Israel, and will settle them in their own land, and aliens will join them. And unite with the house of Jacob. Nations will take and bring them to their own place, and the house of Israel will possess the nations and make captives of their captors. Anyway, that just sets the stage of when this is talking about. It's a future time even for us. And verse 12 is really where I wanted to go to. Here he's talking to Satan. And this is, like I say, a future time. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. You who once laid low the nations, you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, and I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. 15, but you are brought down to the grave, to the depths of the pit. So here, where, like I say, we're thinking that hasn't happened yet. That's still to happen. At least sometimes we wonder, though, with all the evil we see breaking out everywhere. And we know the time is probably short when Satan will be cast down. And also let's turn to Ezekiel 28. Ezekiel 28, verse 12. And here it's a prophecy. Again, it's a prophecy, I think, yet in our future. And it's a prophecy about the king of Tyre. But I think it turns out to be a prophecy about the spiritual power behind the actual king of Tyre, if it was talking about the king of Tyre. This is what the sovereign Lord says concerning the king of Tyre. You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you: ruby, topaz, and emerald, chrysolite, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, a very high-ranking angel, maybe the highest-ranking angel. For so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones, and you were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until wickedness was found in you. Verse 17, your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings. So here again we see the prophecy of him being cast down to the earth. Doesn't sound good for us. You know, in Luke 10, verse 18, we don't need to turn there. Just a short statement from Jesus that Jesus saw Satan fall to the earth. And the time of this, of course, was when he was on the earth. But it doesn't say that that's exactly when Jesus saw him fall. He just says he saw him fall. And it doesn't give any more than that right there. It was the time when he had sent out the 72 apostles to preach and heal and cast out demons. And of course, in Luke 4, 1 through 12, it talks about the time that Satan tested or tempted Jesus. And there again, you know, he was definitely on the earth, but maybe not in the cast down to the earth at that time. And of course, he took Jesus up on the temple and showed him all the things of the earth, all the kingdoms, and said, I'll give these all to you. They're mine, so I can give them to you. I'll give them to you. And Christ didn't dispute that he could do that. He just told him, worship the Lord your God only. Satan wanted him to bow down and worship him. But, you know, there again, it doesn't tell us when Satan will be actually cast down to the earth near the end time. In Jude 6 and 7, it talks about the angels kept not their well, just turn to it really quick. I can't remember exactly what it said. Jude is right before Revelation. Yeah, verse 6. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their home. In other words, the earth, I guess, was their home, at least a great many of them. But they abandoned their home. These he kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. But still, you know, we haven't seen anything to really give the timing of the casting down to earth. But I think Revelation 12 will help us out the most there. Let's turn to Revelation chapter 12. It's a time we certainly don't look forward to very much. Revelation 12. Well, I'm in Hebrews. That's why it's not looking right. Didn't look right to me. It wasn't. Okay, verse 7 in chapter 12. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the Satan or devil, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. That's the time we're not looking forward to. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, Now have come the salvation and power and the kingdom of God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers who accuses them before God day and night has been hurled down. So I think that's probably still happening, that Satan is still right there accusing. But the next verse or two will cast a little more light on it. Verse 12, it says, Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. Verse 13, When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child, to Christ. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's reach. So I think when we see the times and half the time, we recognize that as the 3.5 years of tribulation. And to me, that kind of nails down that Satan will be cast down to earth just shortly preceding that. And that's not a time that we look forward to, and a lot of us may not see it. But anyway, I think that's about as good as you can do as far as when Satan is cast down to the earth. And so with that, I guess we need to have another. You want to have another song, or you ready to go? Okay, we'll have a song. Let's turn to page 23. Page 23.
The title of this message is The New Nazis and Us. The New Nazis and Us, or neo-fascists, if you like that term. Some of this I've been listening and getting stuff from different places, but Klaus Schwab, heads that economic council. They said they were going to restructure the world. Change the world. Obviously, especially meaning the Western world, where the major target, but they really think the whole world. And that's pretty big talk. Going to restructure the whole world. And I think they believe it will be a better version of fascism. Let me define fascism. It's a form of socialism because, the National Socialist parties are Nazis. And Mussolini's idea of fascism and Hitler, like the communists, they're all socialists. But their version actually, I think, is admittedly worked better than communism. It's a partnership between big dictatorial government and big, huge corporations. And they actually got that working fairly well in Germany. At least from some perspective, Germany was a real powerhouse in military power, arms production, and some other things. Obviously, they did a lot of bad stuff, so I'm not in any way. But I believe Klaus Schwab and his guys in Davos, Switzerland, believe this is a better version. It'll be controlled by the elites. By the way, when Karl Marx wrote his original book, Das Kapital, about capitalism being bad and communism, a little subtitle for the elites or the enlightened. In other words, Karl Marx envisioned the enlightened people, not us regular people, would run it. I believe Klaus Schwab and the others, it's still the same kind of vision. The elites will run it. And there's a similarity if you look at communism and fascism. They both use boxcars to take people off to their deaths. In the Russian case, it was to Siberia, and often they used the freezing weather. And of course, in the Nazi case, it was to death camps and various labor camps where they worked people to death. And all that's the Holocaust. The evil men who did most of that are dead. But the evil spirits who inspired it and encouraged it are still alive. And I really believe this. Satan does not give up. He maybe wasn't able to push fascism to be a horrible thing that he wanted it to be. God didn't let him win. And he wasn't able to push communism, although they killed 100 million people. I've got the book at home that gives the details during the whole communist empire. Now, I don't mean in war. I mean government killing its own people in Mao and horrible starvation, the Red Guard, all kinds of weird stories. You can read about them. And they lost. The Cold War was won by America and the West in 1990-91. Give Ronald Reagan and a few other people most of the credit, maybe Margaret Thatcher and the Pope as well. But the point is, when Evil loses. They don't give up. Satan just says, oh, I lost, I'm going to go ahead and be a good boy. No. They go underground and they come up with a new plan, but it's basically infused with the same evil. Because the same demons who inspired it, they didn't die. They're still around. And I could quote the scripture in Ephesians 6:10 that we're not facing mortal enemies, but spiritual powers in high places. But you all know that scripture well. So you understand that it's a spiritual war. The problem with Job's case, as Carl read, Job couldn't see the spiritual part of it because he couldn't see that part. He's unaware of it. We can't see it either. We think evil is defeated, but it just simply regroups and comes at you in a sneaky way, like a snake in another avenue. Now they're using things like global warming, open borders. By the way, one of their things that they wanted was build back better. Those, we're going to kind of tear down the common things. We're going to build them back better. That wasn't thought of by Joe Biden's administration. That came out of Davos. And a lot of European countries in the West are trying their version of it. How well it's working is a matter of to be debated. But and the fact that they moved it to Switzerland is important. Switzerland has maintained its neutrality for centuries. But by putting it in Switzerland, it kind of pulls the Swiss away. Like for the first time in the Ukraine war, Switzerland went along with the banking sanctions. Normally they wouldn't do that because they keep their neutrality. It actually may be hurting them because, anyway, I'm going to the reason why it may be hurting them. We'll talk about that another time. But I think they're trying to pull Switzerland into this too. Right in the heart of Europe, see how that would make it much more powerful? You could bring Switzerland in. Big government and big corporations working together. So like the government can say, we want this and that done. Even if it's not legal, the big corporations can say, hey, you better do this, this, or that, or we'll fire you. We saw that happen in America with COVID-19, right? So even if the courts say the government can't do it, but the corporation can do it, and even if they don't openly do it, they can do it quietly. No promotions. I don't need to elaborate. You can see the power of huge corporations, big government, and big corporations working together. And of course, the government helps the corporations by funneling money to them. Like one lady said, one reason that a particular department store, Target, because they were really advanced in some of their bathroom policies, when they closed all the medium and little stores, Target was one of the stores picked to remain open. Do you realize the big, huge stores picked to remain open got bigger and stronger. Little and small businesses got weaker and weaker. We all think that's a coincidence. And I kind of thought it was too, but now I see it isn't. They're doing the same thing with banking. I'm not sure how it will work out, but you can see Janet Yellen's attitude. Well, we can't save all the banks, but they'll make regional and smaller banks make a fire sale to the few big ones. Someday we'll have maybe only 6 or 7 major, huge banks run everything financial. Realize how important finances are and businesses' growth, expansion. And they can say, we're not investing anymore in fossil fuels. That's destruction. I could elaborate, but you get the idea. Government can help big business, and big business can help government. And if you want to create a socialistic dictatorship. And Klaus Schwab was bragging, at least I consider bragging, and others, that they now have new technology to enforce this. And even people like Trudeau, who is one of the young leaders that he bragged about, went through their program. He admired China's model of controlling their people. I don't understand it all, but they got cameras and using your cell phones and all that high-tech stuff, face monitoring. They give the Chinese people social scores based on things you do, things you say, things they know about you, don't know about you, that affect what they let you do. It's like a control. Now, I don't think it totally works 100% because I think the Chinese people, they get mad enough, they can still say, I don't care about my social score, I'm not going to do it. So, I'm not sure it will totally work, but you can see what they're trying to do. They want to they don't just want to control, they want to control how you think. For instance, if they can control your speech, and they're doing this with college students now, well, I can't use this word. I can't use that. By the way, you're not supposed to use word mother and father as Mother's Day is coming on us. You think I'm kidding. You're a birthing person. You're not a mom. It's so ridiculous. But if you're in college and you realize, I can't use this word, can't use that word, you start self-centering yourself and how you think. That's what they want. Now, they may change what they won't allow and will allow, but it's the control that they want. And they can watch, well, what have you watched on the internet? And I could elaborate to get some idea of how you think and all kinds of things. And let me give you more of the dark side. The top two leaders, Klaus Schwab, his father, and I think as a young teen he was a little bit involved, ran some major Nazi operation, because that's Germanic. He's Germanic. George Soros, who's from Hungary. There was a point, I think around 1943-44, where the Hungarian government decided to go along 100% with the Nazis, and all their Jews were to be, organized and fed into the death camps. Well, George Soros' father, maybe he was 13 or 14, but supposedly he cooperated. I'm not sure the details how they did it. Even though they're Jewish, they turned on their own people and said, we're not Jewish anymore, and we'll help you find and turn in Jews that are trying to escape from the death camp. Now, some did escape from the death camps, and there's some interesting stories about all that. And but the point is, he turned on his own people. Now, he would probably argue, but I can see the Nazis were going to win. I want to be on the side of the winner. You see the darkness of that. So even though the men are gone, maybe in some cases their sons and grandsons are still around. Could be. And, deep down, you never know what they really think. So I want to read this scripture. But how does this affect us? How does this affect us? Here's what God told Moses to write. Deuteronomy 30:19. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I set before you life and death. Now, it's two decisions. One's life and one's death. Blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your seed may live. God is all about free choice. He wants to develop children, sons who choose God freely. Satan wants the opposite. He wants us to bully each other, to oppress each other. He wants poverty, killing, evil. He loves death camps. He loves the Gestapo or the KGB or some other names for the Russian secret police in the past, Chaka, where they terrorize the public. Satan loves that. Yeah, let the police terrorize the public. So in the Garden of Eden, you might ask yourself, why was the bad tree there? Why was Satan allowed in the Garden of Eden? The only logical answer is God was giving mankind freedom of choice. Decide. And God could have counter-argued Satan, or could have nagged them, he could have blocked Satan. No. He told them what they should do, backed off, let Satan get to them, and they made the choice. What God wants us to do is learn to make good choices. We are free moral agents. God doesn't need sons who are like robots. He's got those, cows and sheep. They do what their instinct, what they're designed to do. He wants us to be thinkers, free, to freely love God, to freely see the value that God's ways are best, and to see it in a free choice. And so Christ emphasized freedom of religion. By the way, the boys in Davos do not like freedom of religion. They don't want too much free choice. They don't want too much free thinking. That gives you a bad social score. You do not want freedom of religion. By the way, one reason America has been a thorn in the side of Satan's, well, to my knowledge, more than any nation in the world, though some others have toyed with it, but the first to do it, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and in a sense, freedom of thought was in the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. They don't teach that in school anymore. I'll bet you couldn't find too many people under the age of 40 who could tell you why that was so important. Because they'd been through the battle of different church denominations fighting with each other, and they'd seen in England what an official state church denomination can do to their competition using the power of government. And actually, American government was built on the theme of the least amount of government necessary. Actually, originally, they had very little central government, hardly at all. They realized, that didn't work so well, so they came up with the Constitution that, they made some adjustments on it. But basically, the states run their own thing for most, but, one of the statements of the Constitution, anything that's not specifically given to the federal government is up to the states. Now, they're encroaching on that more and more. Big central government running everything. And I guess it probably started with World War I. The federal government got bigger and huger. By the way, Harding and others and Coolidge, one of the things that they did, I think, is very brave, and they probably don't get credit for. They slashed the federal budget 50%. And that brought in the roaring 20s and one of the greatest leaps in economic growth in world history. Can you imagine somebody cutting the federal budget 50%? What courage that would take? I realize it wasn't as big as it is now, but the point is, and then FDR came, the federal government getting bigger. Anyway, you get the idea. It was based on free choice. Here's what Christ said. Matthew 11:28, compared to what the Jewish leadership wanted. They wanted over-regulation, over-control. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I, meaning Christ and true Christianity, will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, for I am gentle, lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Now we should be, Jesus is for freedom of choice, freedom of decision making. For instance, how you keep the Sabbath is up to you. I'm going to keep my kitchen sink completely washed and empty on the Sabbath, or I'll allow myself 10 dishes, no more. What are people? I've heard people argue this or that. And, will I go to a restaurant on the Sabbath or not? It's really your choice. As long as you know the principle is, it's a feast day, and we really feast around here. We got all kinds of niceties in there to look forward to today. It's a feast day to God, but we get extra spiritual food and physical food. That's the main thing. John 11:47. So we're going to make wise decisions. Then the chief priests and Pharisees gathered council and said, what shall we do? For this man, meaning Christ, works many signs and miracles. And if we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him. What they really were saying is, look, because secretly, one of their members secretly came and told him, we know that you're a man from God. Nobody can do the miracles you're doing if you work. Secretly, I know it doesn't seem logical, but they were scared spitless of Jesus Christ. The miracles he did, the sermons he preached, when they tried to answer him tricky questions, he always bested them. Whoa. They were scared spitless. Everybody's going to follow him, and all this, the wonderful positions we got and all the money we control, it may go to him. One of the bad things about human nature is jealousy, envy, and fear. Fear often leads to hate. And I think Satan loves that. And I think what you're going to find is the group in Davos, if you want to use the term progressives, they changed that term from what they used to do in the communist socialist days. It got a bad name. Progressive. Doesn't that sound good? We're for progress, progressives. The progressives actually hate those who don't want to go along with their agenda. It's not that they say, well, we think this and you think that. We can debate it openly. You can have your opinion, I can have mine. No! It's our way or we hate you. And you will see that as you watch the debate and as you watch issues. fear and jealousy, because they want their control is threatened. They want big socialist government control, and the evil of fascism, the real evil behind it is spiritual. It's still there, and they're working hard to make a comeback. And what they do in Davos does not support religious freedom, personal freedom, financial freedom. America stands in their way, maybe some others a little bit too, mostly America, is that, as Farage said, he told Americans, if you don't elect the right person, the bad guys are going to really get ramped up if America is no longer there to block them. And the election went the wrong way, and we see what's going on now, don't we? What we should have is minimal government. We should have personal freedom. With personal freedom comes personal responsibility. History has proven that large swaths of the population will trade freedom for security. Everybody thinks everybody wants freedom. History proves that, some dictator says, well, I'll give you a subsistence living, and, and our secret police won't mess with you as long as you do and say the right thing. Oh, and people will give up personal freedom for subsistence, for security. And you're going to live to see more of that. That's why the beast can do all kinds of things as predicted in the book of Revelation. And most of the public, some of them might have some doubts in the back of their mind, but they'll know, but if I say too much, they may come for me someday. And you have to feel sorry for the German people. They weren't all that highly educated, weren't all that bad. But once someone like Hitler got control of the police state, and they burned their legislature, the Reichstag, the Nazis. They blamed somebody else, but they did it. So there was no more legislature to check him, and he got the devil gave him some breaks too. But all of a sudden, there was the Gestapo. We actually know this for a fact. They would send the Germans go to these beer gardens and drink and have fun. And I've been to some, and it's fun, and they really know how to put the beer away, and they can handle it. They go to these beer gardens. There'd be people, and they encourage them to spy on each other. This guy doesn't like something the Nazi party is doing. Write down his name. He keeps talking like that. The Gestapo may come to his house at 2 a.m. in the evening and disappear him. That's happening in China now. Some key celebrities and rich people just been disappeared. Who knows which gulag they're in, even if they're alive or not. And all of a sudden, people get afraid to be free. They self-censor. I better not say this, think this. Actually, I know this from one of my students was a Vietnam survivor. It's a great story how pirates got their boat and they were trying to get to Hong Kong. Eventually, they got there. But one thing she said they found out, when the communists took over, her family, her dad was a pilot, and he flew transports for the West. So they're very suspicious of it. They had a family, the communists moved in next door. They insinuated them into their family. They said they agreed with them until they got their dad to reveal his true thoughts about communism. Boom, one day he was sent to, well, they call it re-education camp. I'll call it a gulag. It was horrible. My only point is, this is the kind of state that dictatorships want. And the devil loves it. He says, yes, I want you all to be mean to each other and bully each other and mistreat each other and kill each other and lock each other in camps. And certainly things like family values, Christian values, biblical values. Don't want to hear any of that stuff. I guarantee you. If they use religion, it'll be used to control people, not to push good biblical values. And so and I'm going to ask a question. And we mentioned it a little bit in the podcast, but I want to ask this question. God said in Revelation 20, the first resurrection is the best resurrection. Why did he say that? Well, one reason he said it was those of us who can make it now, when it's harder to make it now, in the great white throne, everybody will be, truth will be available to everybody. Satan will be locked away. It'll be a lot easier. Those of us who can make it now will be at the top of God's family. And what does God want at the top of his family? People who've learned to make good choices even under pressure. Pressure from the inside and the outside. And why is that important to God? One of the things Satan did, as Carl read those scriptures about Satan, one day, we're not given all the backdrop of how it happened, but one day Satan said, hey, I'm a beautiful, powerful archangel, one of the top three, maybe even the number one, never know, but whatever, and I should be God too. I can be up there with God. I should be worshipped like God. What? And at that point, evil entered him. It probably took a process of time. But the more he dwelled on it and thought about it, the more evil he became. Eventually, he had a conspiracy, got a third of the angels to join him, and they tried to take over, and they were kicked out of the inner circle in heaven, even though God allowed him every so often probably to come to a certain place or certain meetings to accuse us and plot a strategy. But at any rate, the point I want to get at is that God wants sons who know how to resist that kind of thing. So for all eternity, God won't have to worry about any conspiracies. And here's what I think. There's the top level, and those are people like Noah, Daniel, Moses, David, and I'm probably going to forget some other important ones, Samuel, and the 12 apostles, all with that high positions. They're the first level. Those people went through a lot, like Paul, but a lot. And God knows that, boy, they can be trusted under pressure, great pressure. Inside, somebody supposed to be one of your friends says, hey, I think we can do better than God. We can be our own gods. Or outside pressure. They faced it both. And then there's the ones that are what I call the first wave of Christians, which we're in. I'm not saying we're at the very top of that, but we're in there somewhere. We'll be at the top of God's family, and God won't have to worry about us because we will have proven ourselves now under the pressure of this world and all its temptations. I'm going to read Isaiah 14:12. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? And I'm going to go to verse 13. For you said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I'll exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of congregation on the farthest side of the north. In other words, we're going to have to learn to resist that kind of thinking, that kind of bad decision making. I'm going to put in this joke here about bad decision making. It's called flight delay. Taxiing down the tarmac, a big jet liner suddenly stops. It's getting ready to go on that final runway to whisk off into the skies, and the pilot returns to the gate. And after an hour-long waiting, the stewardess gets on the PA system, and she says, well, many of you want to know what the problem was. She says, well, the pilot was bothered by some strange noise he kept hearing. Well, we're going to take off now because we got a new pilot. We got a new pilot. Well, can you see, that's the wrong decision to make. You're going to fly. If a big engine jet goes out and you're 30,000 feet, well, it ain't going to end too well, most likely. That's what I call a bad decision making. But verse 14 of that same section, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. In other words, I'm going to be God. I'm going to be. One of the things you notice in Revelation, the beast is worshipped as God, and he's possessed by the devil. So through the beast, the devil is getting worshipped as God. That's what he really wants. That is coming. So God wants those of us in the first resurrection, because we will have learned to resist those desires. One of the things God didn't like was a king who said, hey, I want to take over the high priesthood job as well. That was a real no-no with God. I think I understand God's thinking. Whatever position God gives you, say thank you, be appreciative of it, and say this. I'm not saying that you can't grow and do more and more and more and whatever God has for you. But I'm saying you got to do it in a way that's appropriate. You can't say, I want to be the head dog. I'll stab anybody in the back I have to stab in the back. I'll do anything I have to get to the top. That's what Satan did. God does not want that in any of his sons. Because for all eternity, who knows how big the universe is? Maybe it's almost endless. We may be way out there doing things for God. And if it's run by people who've been through this period where we had to resist Satan and all his influences, you won't have to worry about us. The people at the top of the family can be trusted. So we have to learn to resist things, well, inside and outside. We take the hardest test, so we probably will get and maintain the highest positions. And what does Satan hate? He hates us. People who are in the first calling. Satan probably understands it, at least probably more than you think he does. He's smart. I might have told that story about a guy who messed with a demon-possessed person. He wanted to talk to demons. And they were more clever than he was. It drove him to a mental hospital. They were very clever. Satan knows it. We are his number one target. I mean, I know you don't think of that, but, and I got to think about it more myself, but try to resist bad influences. There are a lot of them out there, and he would love to corrupt us. He would love it. James 1:23. James 1:23. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, and James is very good, and the second chapter is even more so. So doer means you got to make the right decision and do it. He's like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. You know, it's all messed up. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. What kind of men are we? We're people with human nature, subject to envy, jealousy, lust, greed, idolatry, and all those other bad things. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty. Actually, the 10 Commandments are called the law of liberty. God's laws, when properly understood, help you be free. When you don't steal, you don't take bribes, you're free of a lot of bad influences. You don't lie. The perfect law of liberty, and continues in it. And you have to use the law rightly, too. Is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. This one will be blessed in what he does. So, in conclusion, I really just have one basic conclusion to come out of this. You know that evil is ramping up. I have no idea how much power they're going to get. They may ramp up, and then God may say, I'm not letting you ramp up any higher, push you down, hold you down for a little while. And then, maybe they'll ramp up more. So I can't predict how fast they will ramp up the socialist mind control power. But I guarantee you it is coming. There'll be more pressure to think what they tell you to think, to not think what they don't tell you to think. And you're going to see more and more movies and things in the media and in books and in academia. Bible thumpers are bad. Bible principles are wrong. You've got to be modern. And they may even adjust what the modern is. Maybe they'll have a new twist on transgender in a year or two. But whatever they come up with. So I'm not predicting the end as yet. But I guarantee you, Satan hasn't given up creating an oppressive, dictatorial state that will push against God, push against the laws of God, be full of darkness. They'll probably have slave labor camps. There are scriptures that imply that. The Nazis had it, and the communists had it. They may have given them different names. The communists had all kinds of camps, a whole network of them. As a matter of fact, sometimes, this is interesting, they would have writers who wrote books and wrote movie scripts, they'd have them visit the labor camps. Not so much because they didn't want them to write accurately about what they saw. Stalin, I think, did that to show his power and to scare them. Let's say if you're a writer for Pravda, one of those other outlets they have for things, in the government bureaucracy in Russia, and you saw a labor camp, and you realize, you know, if I don't do the kind of things Stalin wants me to do, one day the Chaka or NKGB could arrive at my door and say, you're going to a re-education camp. And they were terrified. Terrified. I mean, you got to think about what it's like. Like one of my Chinese students said, this is like 12 years ago. She might not say this now, but, oh, she wanted to be in America badly. She wanted to find a way to stay here. She said, everything's so intense in China. You Americans are so, you've got so much freedom and there's no pressure and you're happy and you're relaxed. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, you don't feel that way, but compared to the world that she was in, it's all relative, we Americans had freedom. We were relaxed. We weren't tense. We were happy. We weren't worried about what we said. There are a lot of countries where you criticize the leadership and somebody may come visit you. And I know we take our freedoms for granted, but the point I want to make is evil is going to intensify. Now, it may get pushed down by the next election or not. I can't predict the future, but it will come back strong. The devil will not give up, believe me. And he may come up with some more clever schemes to push it too. So what I want to say is we have to make wise spiritual choices every day, wise spiritual choices every weekend, wise spiritual choices every season. And then we can become leading children of God forever.